Hello and welcome to a Real Blogger vs. Alex Inc. series recap. So, I am your host, Pokematic. I've been doing this for 9 years, and I know a hell of a lot more about podcasting than these guys. So, yeah, this series, it was kind of torture in a way, because I am a masochist and I just needed some podcast fodder. And this series, it was that. Yep, it satisfied that need, because there was so much wrong with this, and they got so much wrong that they didn't know anything. So I gotta say something about this. I think that this series failed because of the concept of it, of what they were doing and how they executed that concept, because podcasting is something that could have worked. It could have been a great premise. I really think that this could have really worked. And I really hope someone takes the idea and does it right. So, Alex Inc. It's based off of this podcast called Startup, which loosely based, I should say, because I don't know how much is real, how much they just made up for the show, and how much they just got wrong because they don't know anything about podcasting. But, from what I've researched, Startup is kind of the Alex Schumann story. It's about a guy that quit his day job to start podcasting and kind of create a bit of a podcasting empire. He runs like multiple different podcasts and he produces all of them. And he's very successful and has made a lot of money. Okay, good. Why would you make a TV show about him and not make a TV show about the millions of other people that are actually trying to make a podcast and kind of floundering? Why wouldn't you do it about the millions of other people that are doing this? You see, the thing with sitcoms is that the success of sitcoms is directly correlated to how relatable the characters are. Most sitcoms survive and strive off of the characters being extremely relatable and really well liked, that people can see themselves or people can see their friends or whatever in them. And you know what? I love sitcoms because I can relate to the eccentric character. I am that eccentric character. I have a coin pusher in my living room. I bought an 8-foot ladder so I'd be able to replace the smoke detector batteries because I have high ceilings. I wear a safety vest wherever I go. I do a lot of interesting things. I have a room. I bought my condo specifically to make sure that I could have a room dedicated to my video game collection. I have store display shelves of VHS tapes in my living room. Let that sink in. I have store displays with VHS tapes in my living room. I accept that I am that eccentric character. And that eccentric character is good to have as a side character. But most people, they relate with the Raymond. They relate with the Tim Allen. They relate with kind of Al Bundy. Or they know someone that is basically an Al Bundy. They relate to Roseanne. They relate to Danny Tanner. They relate to the main characters of the sitcom. And if you could make Alec, and this series, it's trying to do that. It tries to do the relatability of like doing a work life versus family life and the conflicts that the family conflicts, they were all like believable and whatnot. It's just that the work conflicts were not believable in the slightest, because I know what it's like to produce a podcast. I know what it's like to produce multiple podcasts. I do. I have the Pokematic podcast, and I have all the different TV logs that I have, and I have my vlog videos, and I have, I think right now I've got about 4 different blogs going right now. So yeah, I know what it's like. And there are thousands, millions of other people out there that know the same thing. They know what it's like to do this in their spare time, give up hours of their week or of their free time after coming home from their day job in order to do this. And that's what this show could have been. Okay, so that's my main gripe with this, is that there's so much that could have been done with this, and it could have been the relatable, the realistic, the understanding kind of a podcast that people could watch and just be like, hey, I know someone that does that. I wonder if that's what he goes through. And here's the thing with this thing. All of the conflicts in the series could have easily been fixed and repaired if you just replaced office with home. That's basically it. All of the conflicts of the series could have actually happened. All the things in here, I'm going to go through basically item by item and explain where the conflicts could have been. Now that I know what all the conflicts that they did and all the situations that they got themselves into, I'm going to go through and explain what the real life equivalent of that is. So, episode 1. Okay, Alex has a day job that he quits in order to pursue podcasting. Okay, trying to find funding, not being sure how they're going to make ends meet because of it. Okay. Having 2 employees, not okay. And making them employees. No, you should have just made them like group partners, collabs, if you will. And I guess you could have kind of brought them in, had them help out, but you shouldn't have been like, they are working for me in my company. No, these are people that are helping you out with your little passion project that you're going to try to make into a real company. And then maybe, just maybe, you're going to end up paying them once you actually start turning a profit. He shouldn't have been going out to try to find the investors in order to get this off the ground and get going. And where they should have made a different turn, and it could have completely changed the direction of this series, is when Eddie, the cousin, said, I have a laptop, I have a microphone, and a chair. Because that's literally all that you need in order to do a podcast. And a laptop. But that's all that you need. You need, and sometimes not even the chair. I mean, right now I'm just sitting on the floor of my closet. So, you need a microphone and a computer. Or if you have a recording microphone, you still need the computer in order to upload it. But yeah, that's all that you need. And they should have gone with that. And they should have made it like he's trying to be... He might have had a little bit of a clash from going from this professional office-produced radio in order to do this thing on a full-time attempt basis with no budget, like most podcasts actually start out with. They should have gone with that, and he would have had to come to grips with having to deal with not having a budget and trying to set this up and trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do without a budget? But no, and do this at home and film and record in his closet like I am currently doing. And that could have worked. And then it would have been like the family life is, his work life is invading on his family life, and his family life is invading on his work life because they're so close in proximity. But no, they go with, I'm going to rent an office space, and that's going to cost a lot of money that I'm going to have to dip into my 401k for. No, that's not how this works. Okay, and then the next episode where it's like, oh, I have 2 meetings where I can meet with a podcast company. I can meet with someone that wants to guest on the podcast, or I could get monetization. First off, that should not have been episode 2. That should have been like episode 6. That's something that happens way down the line, because you need, all podcasts basically start out with nothing. You don't get guests automatically. You don't get monetization automatically. You don't get the sponsorship deals automatically. You just start out by making it. And you just kind of hope that it comes to you later. Because that's what it's really like. That should have happened much later. So there's that. Then there's also the fact that they are having the problem where it's that they have to do 2 meetings. Okay, well, that's not really how this works. When it comes to monetization and sponsorship, it does not happen face-to-face normally. Primarily what happens is that happens over email conversations or direct messages or what have you. That's how that sort of thing happens. You don't get people to meet in person. Same thing goes with the guests. For the most part, the guests don't come and meet you in person. For the most part, the guests just are going to Skype with you or do some other voice over IP connection in order to get in contact with you. That's what actually happens with real podcasting. Very rarely do you actually get people to come into your quote-unquote studio, maybe, in order to have meetings. So that kind of conflict, that wouldn't have happened. What they could have done, though, is with the guests, they could have tried to have two guests. And the two guests want to do Skype meetings. They both wanted to do Skype meetings after having multiple email conversations, but those Skype meetings could have only happened at the same time in order to line up with everyone's schedule. Because most people that do guest spots and whatnot, they have busy schedules. Everyone has busy schedules. There are very few people that are able to just sort of drop everything and just kind of go do it. So that's where that could have come in, and they could have had that conflict, and it could have been basically the same conflict, only much more believable, because that's the sort of thing that actually really happens. And Squarespace, it just happens. That shouldn't have even been a talking point, except for maybe like Squarespace wanting to sponsor, and then they want to get out of the sponsorship because they're not seeing a return on their investment and they want to get their money back or whatever. That could have been a real conflict that they could have gone into. I'm not sure exactly if that really happens, but it's far more believable because they thought that, hey, this is a great thing, but he's not reaching the people that we want him to reach, and they're not engaging with us. Therefore, we're going to pull our advertising. That's what could have been happening. Then the problem with the clean audio. Okay, I get that that was just meant to be like a setup for Eddie wanting to make all of Alex's decisions and whatnot. But again, the clean audio thing, the problem that they were running into is that there was no way to get clean audio in their office space that they're having a communal with. Okay, don't have the office space. Have it go in. Have him trying to do this at home and have that be the problem where he can't get the clean audio, and have his kids cause the problems because his kids keep running around and causing noise, because that's the kind of thing that his kids would do, because his son wants to make music and whatnot, and the daughter, she does her own thing that they could have made noisy, and it could have worked, and that could have been the problem with the sound audio. And you still could have had the trying to soundproof everything and make the soundproof booth, and then like just kind of put it in the middle of the living room and have Rooney not like that, as opposed to the manager guy, the landlord that they're renting the space from. And that could have been the family conflict, and it could have been much better. And that should have been like episode 2. And then the thing with it getting too expensive, episode 4, where he has to fire the nanny. Okay, as I said in that episode, the main problem with that is that they had that office space that was costing them, that I did the numbers, it cost them $40,000 a year to rent. Don't do that. Don't have an office space. Because if you're going to say, I need to cut corners, I need to cut expenses, okay, start with that $40,000 a year office space and go film this in your closet like I am. If you started out with, I'm having trouble making money, I'm producing this with no budget, I'm not spending any money on this, and we're still having problems because we can't make ends meet. Okay, that's where you get into the idea of having the problem, and that's where the conflict could have come from. And that's really it. That's all that they had to do in order to make that episode work. Because it still would have been like fire the nanny, and it still would have been she maybe misinterprets it and starts trying to help him produce his podcast, and still being like getting in the way at home and whatnot, and it still could have been funny. It still could have had all that problems. But no, whatever. And like with the monetizing, this should have come at like episode 5 or whatever. Where it's at right now, it could have worked, but it should have been later, maybe a little bit later in the series, but definitely before the monetizing one, because you can't have that kind of a conflict and then still have the problem with I don't have any money when you are making money. So that's what should have happened. The monetizing conflict and Squarespace and whatnot, that should have happened after this episode. And no name. Trying to figure out the name. Yeah, that is a real problem that people have when it comes to making podcasts. It's not that easy, but that should have been episode 2. I'm going to move the clean audio, still keep that still at episode 3, but not knowing what you're going to name your podcast, that should have been episode 2. Okay? So that's basically it. That was my problem with that episode, is that they're going with all these different, they're getting all this work done and trying to figure out what they're going to do, and they don't have a name. And all these events have happened so far and they don't have a name. This series has continuity. You can't really necessarily watch these episodes out of order because a lot of them there are plot threads and whatnot that lead into each other. So you can't necessarily watch them out of order. There is continuity, and the name, it should have been episode 2. If not that, it should have been part of episode 1. So basically there's that. And then next episode, it's just like a problem was Deirdre, the assistant lady. She was low on money, and the problem is that she's spending all this time on a podcast that doesn't make any money, and she needs to have a second job to actually make ends meet. Okay, yeah, that really happens. She shouldn't have quit her day job. She shouldn't have followed Alex on this crazy event, and she should have just kept her day job, because that's what really happens. And they should have gone to the problem of she's having trouble juggling her day job and Alex's thing. And same thing goes for Eddie. I guess maybe I'm getting the impression that Eddie is just sort of he's sort of the more eccentric guy of the series, where he just kind of does his own thing. You don't really know what his job is, but somehow he still has all this money. So I'll excuse Eddie on that. And then it's just, so that could have been the problem. And maybe it could have been that she is doing an Uber driver thing, and people are saying, hey, we're recognizing you on the podcast. Or that her company comes back and says, hey, we want to hire you back on full time. We see what you're able to do with Alex's podcast, and we need you to come on full time, and we want to sign an exclusive deal with you, because exclusivity is what really would have kept her from doing this. They needed to have it where it was an exclusive deal where she couldn't do Alex's podcast, because exclusive deals are something that actually do happen. Okay? So they could have gone with that. And then there's the cross promotion of the whole podcast thing. And, cross promotion, it's something that actually happens. It's something a lot of people do. And I can't get them on that for that. The only problem, though, is that they were straight up saying that they don't have a product that they're promoting. And that is the main problem with this. They shouldn't have said that we're launching a podcast. They should have said that we have a podcast. They should have said that this is our podcast and this is where you can listen to it, because this is the podcast that we have. I actually have a product to show you. I actually have a product that you can listen to. That would have been the real conflict, and that could have actually worked, and it would have actually made sense, as opposed to saying that I am going to be doing this in months. No, you don't do that. That's not what you do, especially for a startup podcast. You might release a trailer and then in a couple weeks make something else, but you have to be established. You don't just go out and do that. And you especially don't throw away a good job opportunity for a day job in order to cross promote a podcast that isn't even out yet. And I don't think that they were even trying to assign her to an exclusive deal. It's just that she didn't have the time to do it. If you don't have the time to not actively be a part of the podcast, well, then maybe you just shouldn't be, quote unquote, part of the podcast. Deirdre, you weren't actually doing anything. When it comes to producing a podcast, you have the talents, you might have an editor, and that's really it. If you get big enough, you might have someone that books. But that's really it. And if you do get big enough to the point where you have a booker or an editor, then at that point you don't need to necessarily have a second job. Most of the time you're able to say, I'm going to do this full time. I'm making enough money in order to have this full time. The problem shouldn't have been that she just didn't have enough time. The problem should have been that she had an exclusive deal. So there's that. And the cross promotion. And then there's the whole thing with the episode 7, the condescending producing others podcast. This episode I want to say that they should have just completely scrapped the entire concept of this episode. The whole setup that they had where people were coming to Alex and Alex was shooting them down. No, that just does not happen. Because Alex, you're not the only game in town. Plain and simple. Someone has an idea for a podcast, you go out and do it. If you really want to do something, you go out and do it. This is the internet, folks. If you have an idea, you make it. If after a while you realize that this is something that's not sustainable for you, then you stop. And you'll let everyone know that you stopped. But if you you don't go to some big network, quote unquote, or whatever you want to call Alex, and say, I want to produce this. No, you just make it and upload it to YouTube. This show has acknowledged YouTube. They acknowledge that YouTube exists, and that's where the son, Ben, I think his name is, learned how to play guitar through YouTube, which is an open platform. And if you don't have an idea, then you go to YouTube, or you go to DTube, or you go to BitChute, or you go to Dailymotion, or you go to Bitlanders, or you go to SoundCloud, or you can even get on iTunes. There are so many different options. You don't need to get it produced by someone. Maybe you could say, I want you to make this podcast. I want you to do all the work on this podcast. But that actually does not happen to my understanding because people don't do that. That's not something that happens. You might want to go out and try to hire an editor because you are producing it, but you don't try to get someone else to produce this. This isn't a network. That is the problem. Though, the idea that they had, the main conflict of this episode is that, what's her name? Rooney has an idea for a podcast and she wants Alex to do it. Okay, I can kind of get behind that, but it requires some extensive rework. It has to be that Rooney has an idea for a podcast, and she wants Alex to do all the work on the podcast. She wants him to do all the editing, all the booking, and she just wants to talk. That's where the actual conflict could have come from. Or Alex has to do all the heavy lifting, where she just gets to do the fun stuff. That could have been an actual conflict. That could have actually been the problem of the episode. So, yeah, that is where it comes from. And that's where the problem comes from. And that's how it could have been worked better. And the whole work life, family life thing, it could have then went from there. Because it's being produced at home. Then there's the whole idea of paying for focus groups. That doesn't happen. Oh, next episode is the Trolls. Okay, so Trolls, they almost got it right with this one. The Trolls thing, they almost got right. The only thing about it is that they were trolling on a trailer for a podcast that hasn't come out from someone that has no establishment to something that probably wouldn't have gotten any views. Okay? So, as I was saying, this show is coming out in 2018. And the setting for it is basically 2018, from what I can tell. This isn't like back when I started out on YouTube, where there just weren't really anyone out there. Where I made a video about my thoughts on abortion and how I'm pro-life, and it got like 10 views, and then I got a troll. This isn't like when I made a video where I said, hey, don't watch Unnatural History. It got 1,000 views and got basically 100 troll comments. The landscape of the internet has changed a lot. And if you're going to produce a little trailer like that, you're not going to get any views and you're not going to get any trolls. That's the thing. And the problem with this episode is that they were basing it on the trailer going into the launch. This should have been something where it was something that happened earlier. This is something that should have already been established. This is something where the podcast should have been out. It should have been like he's getting numbers. He's getting reviews. He has episodes out, and people are then starting to write the nasty comments on his podcast. That's what should have happened. It shouldn't have been on a trailer. It should have been that he already produced it. And then he's getting discouraged because people are being mean to him. And he's not used to having to deal with that. He's not used to having to deal with the vitriolic anger of the internet and dealing with the worst of the worst. Okay, but that should have been on a fully produced episode. It shouldn't have been on a trailer because no one's going to watch a trailer for a no-name podcast. Now we get into the paying for the focus groups, which should have basically led right into episode 10. So episode 9 was about getting numbers and getting feedback and trying to figure out how you can make a better podcast and make a better show. And then 10 was about him getting discovered. He gets a boost. People realize him and his numbers dramatically jump. However, the problem with this is that they based it on a focus group, which is not something that actually happens. You don't focus group podcasts. You just make the podcast, and then you check the numbers. What they could have done to do that is that the podcast could have been doing very poorly or whatever. And here's what could have happened. So an episode that they spent a whole lot of time on that should have been like a really, really big one, a big, major project for their podcast. What should have happened is that instead of deleting the numbers of the focus group, they should have deleted the podcast. That's what they should have done. And Deirdre and Eddie, not being that tech savvy, they don't realize that there are backups and restore points and whatnot. So Deirdre is doing some editing of the podcast, and she finishes the render, and as it is, and she makes 2 different copies of it, and one is the good version and the other is the bad version because it doesn't export properly, and she has to export it again or whatever. And then the good one comes out, and then she goes to delete the bad one, but then she accidentally ends up deleting the good one, and something happened to the audio file that they recorded, and it got deleted or corrupted or whatever. So all that work would have to be done again. And they're scrambling trying to figure out what they're going to do because they don't have the podcast. They don't have the actual product that they're trying to produce. And that would have been the conflict. And then Eddie and Deirdre would have had to come clean to Alex. And then Alex is just like, oh, we just got to restore this to a previous version. And then he goes in, says restore previous version, like I've done so many times. And there's the podcast, and no harm nor foul. And that could have been the entire episode, and it could have worked that way. Then when it comes to the whole getting discovered thing, just have him get a big boost in popularity and have the fame start running to his head. And he just gets overwhelmed with having all of these people coming in, and maybe he starts getting recognized on the street, and it starts kind of eating into his family life that way. And just not have the career day thing. Just drop that career day plot and go with some other conflict that they could have done. Maybe Alex wants to get Ben to be on the podcast. Or he wants Ben to create his own podcast and he'll produce it, but Ben's not into it. So there's that, and it would have been, and you would just drop that. And then there are other conflicts that they could have gone into. There's the whole thing with Rooney and how she can't deal with real life and deal with making her own podcast and whatnot. And that should have been something that Alex had to deal with. What this series should have been is that there should have been conflicts of Alex having to balance work life and personal life while being at home and like trying to separate his closet from the rest of the house and being work dad versus home dad. That's what the conflict should have been. There shouldn't have been any of these, oh, sorry, son, I can't do that because I'm working. Because when it comes to podcasting, okay, if you're going to be a full-time podcaster, you're a stay-at-home and you have kids and whatnot, you're a stay-at-home parent, plain and simple. If you are not making money on this and you're just keep trying and trying and trying, you are a stay-at-home parent. That's it. That's all I can really say is you are a stay-at-home parent. And until you actually start becoming successful, this is just a hobby for you. I'm sorry, guys. If you think that this is a real job or whatnot, until you actually start making money at it, it's a hobby. Plain and simple. I've been doing this hobby for 9 years. There's nothing wrong with having a hobby. It's a great hobby to do. I've met some great people doing this. I've had a whole lot of fun doing it. But it's not a job. It's not a career. If I were to do this full time and if I had a wife, my wife was making all the money, then I would be categorized as a stay-at-home dad, and that should have been the problems and the conflicts that Alex ran into, because he wants to be there for his kids. He wants to be the involved dad. He wants to be the involved parent, but at the same time, he wants the podcast to succeed. He has this quote-unquote new baby that he needs to nurture and take care of, but he also has his quote old babies, quote-unquote, where he has to deal with them and his kids, and that's how it should have been. It shouldn't have been like this. I am away from home, because that's not realistic in terms of making podcasts. You make podcasts at home. You make them in your closet like I am doing right now. You make them in your home office. You make them while you are cooking dinner, while you are sitting on the couch doing laundry. That's what you do. That's what it's really like. And they should have gone with that angle. They should have gone with the Mr. Mom trying to do a side hustle and Eddie and Deirdre trying to make this legitimate, but it just isn't. And then maybe at the end he does get noticed and whatnot. But yeah, millions of mommy bloggers out there. Tell me, do you go to an office in order to write your mommy blog? Or do you do it at home while you're cooking dinner and folding laundry and vacuuming? Tell me, that's what this series should have been. It should have been like Mommy Blog the series. Just Alex and Daddy blogging and whatnot. And it just had so much potential. What I think should happen is I think that this shouldn't be a TV show. At least not in the conventional sense. Maybe someone out there that just has the crazy idea. If I had the time and the talent, I would do this series, only I would do it right. And I would talk about I'd make Alex go through the conflicts of having being a dad and being a stay-at-home parent, while at the same time trying to nurture a successful podcast and trying to do the online thing and trying to make it online. I would have basically told my story and the millions of other people out there that have the same story that I do. And maybe at after a point, I would have made him get successful. At the end of season 1, I would have had him maybe get successful, like they kind of did right now, where he got featured, tweeted by Shark Tank, and then he would have gotten big. But I still would have made him like do it at home, and it would have been a real blog. It would have been it would have been believable. I would have been able to believe all the conflicts that they had. But yeah. Anyone out there, please, if you have a podcast or if you've been doing blogging and whatnot for years and you have the time and the resources in order to actually tell your story and what it actually means to be a struggling, starving artist, doing this for years, doing this as a side hustle, doing this right before when you get home from your 9-to-5 day job, doing this in your spare time, doing this on the weekend, using up all of your Saturday and all of your Sunday, just trying to make this happen, make your dream happen to produce something. Please do that. Tell the real story of blogging. Tell the real story of someone that puts all their chips in this. Tell the real story of actually going through the process of making a podcast, of making online videos, of making blogs, of all of that. Please tell that story. Just don't tell this Alex Inc. story, please. And if you don't go to the networks because they don't know what they're talking about, go to Hulu, go to Netflix, go to Amazon Prime, go to the internet TV shows, go to YouTube Red, for crying out loud. YouTube Red needs some good content, and there are plenty of big name YouTubers out there that could tell your story with that. This thing should be a YouTube Red series. This would be perfect for YouTube Red. YouTube, if you're listening to this, please get the content creators out there. Get Matt, Pat, PewDiePie, Game Chasers, Pat the NES Punk, Angry Video Game Nerd, Chris Bores, Steven Crowder, myself, whatever. Get all of us. Get people that actually know the struggle of how making podcasts are, what it means to actually build something. Get the CinemaSins guys. They fumbled through like 5 different channels until they figured out CinemaSins, and that actually got them popular. So please, someone out there actually do Alex Inc. correctly. Take the concept of Alex Inc. of a real blogger, someone who got so fed up with the 9-to-5 rat race that they decided that they're going to quit their day job and start doing blogging. And then go through the struggles of doing that and being a no-name blogger. Please, someone do that. Do Alex Inc. right. Okay. Now that that plea is over, I'm kind of glad that this show got canceled. I normally don't say that about TV shows and whatnot. I normally don't say that I wish things get canceled. But Alex Inc., you just got so much wrong, and you were painting such an incorrect light on podcasting, and you were doing and it was just such an insult that you had to be canceled. Or you should have hired me on full time. You should have watched this series of podcasts and said, hey, this Catholic Controversy Pokematic guy knows what he's talking about. We should hire him on full time. That would have been like my dream. I would have finally made it after 9 years. But you know what? If it wasn't that, then I'm glad you got canceled. Okay, well, this has been Pokematic signing off, and bye-bye. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the end card. So, yeah, I had to stand up and walk around a little bit and get a drink of water because I've been recording this for hours. I've been doing this for about an hour straight. Just sitting in my closet, talking to my webcam microphone and doing Audacity and whatnot. So, yeah, because that's what real podcasting is like. That's what the real podcast is like. And I'm not going to harp on this anymore. Alex Inc., it's over. So, yeah, hopefully you enjoyed your time with me doing this. And, hopefully we can get a real Alex Inc. Like, something that actually tells the story of the millions of us out here who are just struggling. I know. Here's the crazy thing about this. If you Google Alex Inc. episode 6 or 7, I think it also worked with 5, but various different episodes of Alex Inc., if you Google them, this pops up as on the first page of Google. So I've arrived in that sense of the word, but even though I'm on the first page of Google and there are probably people out there that are searching Alex Inc. episode whatever, no, I'm not getting tons of views on these videos. So yeah, the struggle is real, and that's what Alex should have had to face. And that's what he should have had to deal with, being a struggling, starving startup of a podcast. Because, in the first year, even in the first 3 years, depending on what you're doing, you're just not going to get views. And, maybe, whatever. I'm getting kind of tired of harping on Alex Inc. And I do say that I did have some pie in the sky ideas of someone at ABC recognizing this. And for season 2, I get called up and said, hey, we'd like you to come work on Alex Inc. for us and be a consultant and tell us what it's really like to be a blogger. And then, they send me the scripts, and then I read through the scripts, and I tell them, this one happened, this is how it would actually happen, this is what you would really expect from doing podcasts and whatnot. And that would have been it. It would have been... And then, after doing another season and it being, actually succeeding and getting higher ratings, then they fly me out to LA or Hollywood or wherever this is filmed. And then I actually, get to meet everyone. And then people... And, I get there with Zach Braff, and it's just Zach, it's me, Pokematic. I'm the guy that saved Alex Inc. I'm the guy that actually knows what it's like to be your character, Alex, and whatnot. And it would have been, really cool, but, pie in the sky, imagining that was just a fantasy. And now it never really could be a reality because Alex Inc. is no more. So, yeah, I don't necessarily have ill will toward this series, except for episode 7, which was just straight. No, it was episode. Was it episode 7? Which one was the one with the condescension? 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, episode 7. That was the one with the condescension and saying, oh, you need to know a lot of things, and you can't just have the kernel of the idea, because that's what podcasting is. You get a kernel of an idea. James Rolfe, the guy who's the angry video game nerd, he first 3 episodes of AVGN were just things that he did for fun. He showed them to a couple of his friends. They said, hey, you should upload these to this YouTube thing. And then he got discovered by Game Trailers and started doing this full time. Nostalgia Critic, he made a couple of videos making fun of, I know his second one was Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue. That got pretty big, and then he ended up signing with Blip and made his own website and was able to go from there and whatnot. So, but that started out as just a kernel of an idea. He just said, I'm going to make fun of Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue. Stuff with Scoutfly. He said, this Phantom Strider guy making top 10 lists on cartoons. I don't see anyone else doing this. I'm going to do what he does. And he was able to get very, very big. And it just kind of keeps going with the territory of these guys. Everyone just starts out with the kernel of an idea, and then that's what happens. They don't have all of this high production, all this fodder and whatnot that goes into making a TV show. No, it's just like that. You just come up with an idea and you do it. So that's where this show really failed. And that was the big thing with this, is that I get that they were basing this off a startup. I get that this is based off of that one podcast, that one guy that quit his job to make podcasts and ended up making a podcasting empire. I get that. But he's one guy. There are millions of us out there who are doing this thing and trying and struggling and barely getting by and working our day jobs because of it. And that's who Alex should have been. He should have been the common man. He should have been the everyman. He shouldn't have been that eccentric millionaire guy that stumbled into this and started getting very, very popular. He should have been the struggling guy. If this was 2009, I would believe this. If this was 2007, I would believe this. I'd even go up to maybe like 2012. But definitely not in 2018. Because in 2018, everyone has a YouTube channel. Everyone has an Instagram. Everyone has a Vine. Anyone and everyone is making podcasts. It's that simple. And there's just so much out there that I just can't believe that he would have all this success and status without having really anything to show to that he proved it. So they could have gone with a more realistic approach, and they should have gone with a more realistic approach. But I'm done. You know, everyone, if you enjoyed this, if you enjoyed hearing me talk about what it's like to actually make podcasts and actually do this for 9 years and share my experience with you, you know, give me some words of encouragement, and maybe I'll continue to do this. Maybe I'll go into my well of experience and tell you about the things that I've done and my experience with being on the internet I've been enjoying the internet for more than a decade. I grew up with the internet back when started doing the internet back when I was 10. Back when I was play games on shockwave.com. And then heard things with Funny Junk, and then YouTube kind of popped up, and that was big and exciting and new. So I could go into that. I could go into the details of anime music videos and all that. So yeah, if you want to continue to hear me talk about making online content and the kind of online content that I've discovered and whatnot, I can't promise a weekly series because it's much easier for me to react than to proact. So yeah, but let me know if you want to see more from this, and I'll be happy to come back with some more things and maybe talk about what it's like to film this right before I'm about to go to bed and making podcasts and whatnot that nobody sees, and the different mistakes that I've done throughout the years and how I would try to help people make better decisions and hopefully help them get successful. So whatever. Anyway, end card things. So thank you for joining me on this adventure. If you want to see more from me, Pokematic, this is specifically going out to my YouTube audience. I generally don't upload to YouTube. The YouTube channel is more for the Catholic controversy videos. If you want to check out my stuff, Pokematic, best place you can find me is our website, which is ccphgvideos.blogspot.com. Link below in the description as always. And you can also check out all the previous episodes of Alex Inc. right through the website. Definitely recommend you do that. And I might continue the Real Blogger versus Alex Inc. moniker, maybe, or modify it to reboot in order to be just a real blogger versus nothing or whatever. I don't know what I'm going to do. That is if I decide to do it. I don't know. Well, we'll see. Future is completely uncertain. So yeah, be sure to check me out there. And anyway, if you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like, up, buzz, or whatever you need to do to show your love. And if you want to see, be sure, I can't say if you want to see more about this, be sure to subscribe, because there's not going to be any more episodes of Alex Inc. So there's not going to be really any more episodes of A Real Blogger versus Alex Inc. But, whatever. Feel free to subscribe. I do all sorts of different crazy things. One thing I recently released is a joke video of me auditioning for Channel Awesome. pretty funny. Might link that below as well. And it'll be through one of my various different other platforms, so you can see the different places where you can find me. And if you want to help support my show and help support me, because I don't have Squarespace jumping down my throat to give me sponsorships, so if you check me out on Patreon for just $1 a month, you can get your name up there in that little Patreon credit section. But if Patreon's not your thing, I've also got a Bitcoin Faucet Rotator where you can get free Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, and Dashcoin while at the same time help support the show. And that's one thing that Alex should have done. He should have gone into the whole Patreon and alternative money-making deals. So, whatever, I'm done. I gotta go to bed now because I have to wake up in the morning because I have a day job. All right, catch you guys later. Bye.